Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I think we're going to get started. It's very warm. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Hamill. I'm the Associate Vice President of Resilience at the International Institute for Sustainable Development. I'll encourage everybody to put on their headsets so that we can hear each other clearly throughout the next hour. And so it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's event, Island and Inland Voices, Advancing Inclusive Adaptation in Grenada and Eswatini. Firstly, a special thank you to the NDC Partnership Pavilion for hosting us. We greatly appreciate this unique platform to exchange with peers. And thank you as well to our partners from the governments of Eswatini and Grenada and the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub for coming together for today's timely discussion. So as founding director for the NAP Global Network, hosted by IISD since 2014, it's a true pleasure convening our partners from Eswatini and Grenada, two countries with distinct geographies and vulnerabilities, both demonstrating leadership to advance inclusive, locally grounded, and technically sound adaptation planning. Since we were established in 2014, the NAP Global Network has supported 92 countries, with 1/3 of the support directed to least developed countries. Our approach has always been to provide tailor-made and flexible technical support that helps maintain momentum in the NAP process while ensuring inclusivity, gender responsiveness, and national ownership. We're also pleased to recognize the instrumental contribution of the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub. The hub provides a distinctive and catalytic form of support, placing in-country and regional advisors and helping translate adaptation plans into actionable projects. Their partnership complements the technical assistance of the NAP Global Network by ensuring that adaptation planning does not stop at the adaptation planning stage, but advances towards financing and implementation that is inclusive, context relevant, and locally grounded. Now, I'm just going to say a few words about the two countries that we're going to be hearing from today. So first, Grenada. Our partnership with Grenada goes back to 2016 when the government first co-hosted the first Caribbean NAP Assembly. And so this was a meeting that that was an opportunity to convene 11 countries from the region to talk about their national adaptation planning, some of the challenges, and also what they can be doing to translate them into concrete inclusive action. Since then, and more recently, we've been working with Grenada, and the recent phase of support has included updating their NAP with stronger technical foundations and broader stakeholder engagement, raising public awareness through education campaigns that connect communities with adaptation efforts, and strengthening monitoring and evaluation learning systems. And I was told that this morning, Grenada submitted its latest NAP to the UNFCCC, so congratulations to them. It's a significant milestone, and it's and I hope they're feeling very, very proud. So through these experiences, Grenada offers rich lessons, not only to the Caribbean and other SIDS, but I think to other developing and developed countries on how to engage communities, integrate local knowledge, and bridge planning with implementation. Similarly, we've been working with Eswatini, but it's been a more recent partnership, and it started in 2021 when we worked with Eswatini to develop their first adaptation communications that they submitted. And in this adaptation communications, they underscored the importance of mobilizing communities, raising awareness of the NAP process, and ensuring that traditional knowledge informs climate responses. And so, building on this foundation, we've been working with them to form a NAP task team, and we'll be hearing more in detail about what their efforts have involved. We've developed a comprehensive outreach program and documented in 2 publicly available publications that you'll probably be hearing about as well. Both Grenada and Eswatini show that inclusive adaptation is not only about planning, but about participation, about ensuring that diverse voices from island communities to inland villages shape how countries prepare for and respond to climate change. That is the spirit of today's session, to amplify both island and inland voices and reflect on what it takes to make adaptation not only technically sound, but socially inclusive, culturally relevant, and driven by the people most affected. We're very much looking forward to hearing more today from our partners and learn from their respective journeys. So to kick things off, it's my pleasure to invite our first presenter. And so I'd like to invite, our first presentation will come from Mr. Lucky Sigudla, a meteorologist and lead from Eswatini's National Adaptation Plan from the Ministry of Tourism and Environmental Affairs in the Kingdom of Eswatini. And so he'll walk us through the Eswatini's NAP journey, how the process has evolved, the priorities identified, and the lessons learned along the way. So Lucky, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ain. My presentation on Eswatini's journey will be in two parts. First, I'll just give you a brief snapshot of the NAP as it is, our identified options, the cost of implementation, and key strategic actions. Then I'll move on to how to demonstrate on how we ensured that our NAP process was all inclusive, like bringing everyone on board, and including the technical support we did receive during our journey. Well, the vision of our NAP is to ensure a climate resilient Eswatini by the year 2035 and beyond, where the different sectors of the economy will anticipate, absorb, and adapt to climate shocks and stresses for improved resilience. Our overarching goal is to build a nationally resilient climate adaptive society through a coordinated, evidence-based, and mainstreamed approach to climate change adaptation. These are our key priority sectors that we identified in our NAP. As you might be aware, our NAP took a multi-sectoral approach. We identified energy, water, wash and health, agriculture and food security, biodiversity and ecosystems, infrastructure and human settlements, and disaster risk reduction as our key priority sectors. Okay. Thank you. So this is a snapshot of the investment requirements of our NAP process. This was obtained after having done multi-criterion analysis. We also did the cost-benefit analysis to come up with these figures. The total cost for implementing our NAP runs into $1.33 billion US. And these are some of the key strategic actions. We have knowledge and learning. Here we intend to have a knowledge management system developed under the NAP. We'll also aim to produce a plethora of knowledge products to be disseminated for enhancing knowledge sharing. Institutionalization and mainstreaming. Here we intend to have all the key sectors in the ministries involved in the NAP so that the identified priorities could be taken back to their respective ministry and be key actionable items. Capacity building, finance and resource mobilization, where we aim to have a budget allocation for some of the activities from the national purse, including a taking of climate adaptation activities. Monitoring and evaluation, accountability and learning. We intend here to have all the sectors reporting through our mail system, which has been developed together with the NAP. Okay, this is the second part of the presentation where I will try and demonstrate how our process was inclusive. Our process was participatory, involved participatory stock taking and problem framing, community consultations and local adaptation plan, which we piloted. It employed gender and social inclusion lens, and which this was applied across all assessments, and it involved a comprehensive stakeholder mapping and targeted outreach activities, particularly youth, private sector, and NGOs. These are some of the analyses where all the involvement of the sectors was key, including the impact, risk, and vulnerability assessments, cost-benefit analysis, the development of prioritized the prioritization criterion and the training to the sectors on the integration of the into planning and national tools. On institutional leadership and governance, we have a climate change committee, which is a high-level committee comprised of principal secretaries. This is to guarantee a buy-in, a political buy-in and accountability across all line ministries. And we also have the multidisciplinary teams from line ministries and parastatals, which, amongst others, will translate the high-level NAP goals into sector-specific actions. We had challenges while we were developing our NAP, which included the data gaps, inconsistency in the data sets, and data acquisition difficulties due to lack of data sharing protocols. We also had a high stakeholder turnover. You find that the stakeholders we started with were not there at the end, and and there was also fatigue due to the many engagements we need to have with the stakeholders. You find that we know they are fatigued. We did learn some valuable lessons in our processes. For example, it's easier for us to develop MOUs with the partners we intend to collaborate throughout the NAP process to facilitate the easier collaborations. In this case, we developed MOUs with UNESCO, who are going to be our University of Eswatini is going to be our research. We've got a research component, and they are going to be our delivery partner. We also have an economic institute, SEPAC, which was given a bulk of the job of the NAP. We had to develop MOUs and EMPA, which will deliver some trainings on the NAP. We also learned that it's important to build a local capacity for our local consultant. In this case, we ensured that we embedded international expertise to work alongside them so that we retain the knowledge and expertise from them. The importance of engaging traditional leaders and local governments in risk profiling and adaptation was found to build legitimacy and actionable outcomes. We also realized that it's important to accredit our local institution for easy access to the funds, to the GCF funds. These are some of the examples of our NAP initiatives. Here, these are the local adaptation planning. Here, we intend to ensure that the local communities, instead of being passive beneficiaries of resilient building activities, they are active actors, co-creators of their own resilience building. This we piloted in one of the regions in Swaziland, and we are trying to upscale and replicate it across the country. We have completed developing a framework that will be used to upscale and replicate it countrywide. We also engaged the youth in what we call the Youth Parliament, where we gathered 24 youth parliamentarians representing the 4 geographic regions of the kingdom to discuss and talk about the issues. And we gave them workshop on being climate change champions, so that they will, they will be active participant in the national adaptation planning activities in their local communities and at national level. These are pictures from some of the workshops we had with our youth parliamentarians. And we also engaged in vigorous awareness raising campaigns across all the regions to sensitize the communities. Here there will be multiple stakeholders, including the traditional leadership, women, children, vulnerable groups across all the regions. And this is an ongoing activity. We'll be engaging in this vigorous awareness raising campaign throughout our NAP process. Some of the pictures from our awareness raising campaigns in the region. Technical partnership. The NAP Global Network has been our partner in our journey to the NAP. And I'm sure you'll recall that I was a member of the NAP Global Network Steering Committee until recently. Yes, they assisted us in, amongst other things, in developing knowledge products, including the traditional knowledge and the indigenous systems. And recently they've helped us, the NAP Global Network, in reviewing our draft NAP, which we hope to submit by the deadline, which is the end of December 2024. It's currently we are in the drafting, we are writing it, almost the final version. We hope to submit by the end of the year. And we will, as we move from planning to implementation, more assistance will be required, technical assistance, including probably embedding international consultants to assist us transit from the planning phase into the implementation phase. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Lucky. Great to get that great overview of the NAP, and looking forward to seeing the new one. An early congratulations to you and your team. Okay, so then now we're going to turn to Grenada. And so our next presentation will take us across the ocean to the Caribbean, and we'll be hearing what the process has been like over there. And we're going to do that through video. So we're going to hear from Dr. Roxanne Graham-Victor, who's the lead for the National Adaptation Plan in Grenada. And she'll be sharing a short video highlighting the NAP process and some of the milestones.
It is a privilege to share with you the remarkable journey that has led to the completion and cabinet approval of Grenada's revised National Adaptation Plan for 2025 to 2030. This plan is essentially like a national roadmap for climate resilience. And it's also, you could say, like a call to collective action and a reaffirmation of our country's commitment to protecting our people, our ecosystems, and our economy from the impacts of climate change. Climate change, as you know, remains one of the greatest challenges of our time, and for us in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, it has also presented an opportunity for us to be able to, build back smarter and greener, and for us to be more, of course, inclusive in our planning and execution. Our journey to this revised NAP began several years ago, building upon the achievements of the first National Adaptation Plan, helped establish the institutional framework we rely on today, including the National Climate Change Committee, so we call that the NCCC, and the Climate Change Focal Point Network, which we actually had to re-establish, but the foundation was already there. We saw progress in key sectors, new climate smart agriculture initiatives, for example. Then there is in Grenada climate resilient water sector, which also supported and continues to support several infrastructural upgrades, and that's just to name a few. However, as climate impacts, intensified from rising sea levels to Hurricane Beryl's devastating landfall in 2024, especially on our sister isle, Carriacou, it became clear that Grenada had to move beyond simply discussing adaptation. The realities we now face bring us into the realm of loss and damage, where the effects go far beyond what can be adapted to. We are confronting new risks and evolving challenges, and as we respond, we must also continue to draw on lessons learned and contribute to global best practices. And the revised NAP reflects this evolution, aligning closely with the UNFCCC's updated NAP technical guidelines, which we actually contributed to the latest updates and the Paris Agreement adaptation goals. So the revision of the NAP I would describe as comprehensive and a very inclusive process. And this was led by the Ministry of Climate Resilience, the Environment and Renewable Energy, with strong support from its climate resilient water sector project actually, and the NAP Global Network. The revision process actually began in 2022 using the NAP progress report that assessed, what worked in the first cycle. And then there was some level of engagement with technical experts to seek, updates since and contribute towards a zero draft. And myself and a stakeholder engagement officer came on board last year, and we conducted a number of multi-stakeholder consultations, both virtually and in person, reaching stakeholders from every sector. We also did a number of sensitization events in every parish of Grenada. where we also learned even more grassroots and specific problems affecting people, and they also offered ideas as well. And this was also complemented by public outreach via radio, TV, social media. And we also engaged high-level officials prior to submitting for approval. And by September 29th this year, after all the extensive technical reviews and high-level discussions with the National Climate Change Committee and the Senior Management Board and the Cabinet of Ministers, Cabinet gave its final approval, and this date, September 29th, marked a major milestone for Grenada, affirming our readiness to transition from planning to full-scale implementation. So the revised map represents a transformation in how Grenada approaches adaptation. There were a few advancements, for example, deeper community engagement. So the map made community sensitization a top priority, and it's actually through the community sensitization events of explaining what a NAP is and hearing the concerns of citizens in every parish of Grenada, to the currently ongoing Youth in Action for Climate Change Adaptation campaign, and school outreach and creative tools like Adapting to Climate Change, a coloring book. We want to ensure that climate resilience is understood from the classroom to communities to the cabinet. So this plan explicitly integrates gender responsive approaches, acknowledging the differentiated impacts of climate change on men, women, boys, and girls. It aligns closely with Grenada's gender equality policy and action plan as well. So reflecting on lessons from Hurricane Beryl, the plan explicitly addresses loss and damage, recognizing that some climate impacts go beyond adaptation, like I mentioned earlier. Grenada's innovative use of a hurricane clause to suspend debt repayments and the CCRIF payout of about 44 million are featured as best practices, examples of financial resilience. So importantly, the revised map identifies a set of national priority action areas, initially to be pursued, first, and those are recognized as investment friendly and high impact. So, for instance, we have the strengthening of health systems for climate resilience, ensuring our health sector can respond to climate-related illnesses and disasters, advancing modern and sustainable infrastructure, designing and building for climate resilience. Then there is enhancing disaster risk reduction and early warning capabilities, to protect lives and livelihoods. There's also securing and managing water resources. This will always be a major one, given the increase in variability and the drought risk. Then we also have promoting ecosystem-based restoration solutions, such as mangrove rehabilitation and reforestation. Even before the NAP was cabinet approved, we already started coming up with a concept note of the Carry a Tree to Carry a Crew campaign, and actually recently launched this campaign. It's all about citizens ferrying a tree to Carriacou when they're going over there. Also, we have ensuring climate resilient agriculture and food systems, to safeguard nutrition and rural livelihoods, and it's all about decreasing our importation as well. And it's important to mention that across all these priorities, energy is reaffirmed as a critical enabler for resilience, powering essential services, supporting low carbon infrastructure, and underpinning climate smart systems that reduce vulnerability and enhance, adaptive capacity. So at the core of the revised National Adaptation Plan are 14 program of actions. The previous NAP would have had 12. These program of actions, or POAs like we like to call them, are organized into two main groups. Very important. There's the supportive enabling structures, and then there's the sectoral adaptation actions. So the supportive POAs establish the systems and capacities needed for effective delivery, covering things like, institutional coordination, policy integration, public education, data and projections, monitoring and evaluation, and adaptation financing. And together, you can see that they form the governance and financing backbone of the National Adaptation Plan. Then there's the sectoral POAs, right? Focusing on areas where climate impacts are very much most, visible: water availability, food security, ecosystem resilience, integrated coastal zone management, sustainable infrastructure, for instance, land management, disaster risk reduction, and health systems. Notably, health, which was previously grouped with disaster risk reduction in the first NAP, now stands as a dedicated program of action, reflecting, its importance as the national pillar for climate resilient development. And this is actually supported by a separate health NAP as well. So yes, we do have a sectoral health NAP. And a new and forward-looking POA we also have is one that is on climate mobility. This has been introduced to address, human security, displacement, and migration linked to climate impacts, whether it's slow onset events to natural disasters. With cabinet approval secured, our focus now shifts squarely to implementation. We will operationalize the NAP through, sectoral plans, measurable targets, and, a robust monitoring and evaluation framework that ensures accountability and, transparency. And to achieve this, Grenada must, of course, mobilize new financial and technical resources. We are advancing, capacity building initiatives and exploring blended finance models that combine, public funding and private investment and international climate finance. And there is still room, of course, to learn more. Our goal is really clear here, and we want to unlock financing that drives action on the ground. So I will just wrap up very much importantly that it is good for countries to ensure that their program of action includes clear objectives, measurable indicators, designated responsible entities, and an indicative budget to, guide implementation and accountability and resource mobilization. Because, together these program of actions chart, a unified path forward, and this helps to bridge science, the policy and planning, so science, policy, and community action.
Great. Thanks to Roxanne, who did a great job of providing an overview of Grenada's NAP, which again just got submitted to the UNFCCC this morning. Okay, so look, we're going to shift to a bit more of a conversational part of this side event, and so I want to invite up to the stage here. We've got Ms. Dudu, who's going to be joining us, who's the Director of Department of Meteorology, Ministry of Tourism and Environmental Affairs in Eswatini. So please come on up to the stage. We've got Dr. Martin Barreto, the Commonwealth National Climate Finance Advisor from Grenada, who's going to join us. And then Dr. Deepa, who's the Commonwealth National Climate Finance Advisor for Eswatini as well. So thanks so much for joining us. Great. So we heard, we were given some overviews of the NAPs for these for the two countries, for Eswatini and Grenada. And so I just wanted to sort of talk a little bit more about the process, because we know that what goes behind these documents is a lot of process, a lot of efforts, a lot of capacities, a lot of conversations and analysis. And so my first question to the panel is, what were the most significant challenges you faced in developing your national adaptation plan, and how did you overcome them?
Thank you very much. As introduced, I'm Dudu Mhlengetwa Masina from Eswatini, and Yes, developing the NAP didn't come without challenges. One of the challenges that we faced, the first group of challenges that we faced along the implementation institutional arrangements and changes in personnel. Our NAP project commenced in 2019, and it was supposed to be finished within a period of about 3 years. But as it commenced, we found ourselves facing a number of challenges. There was COVID, and there were also changes in institutional arrangements. Our NAP preparation plan also centered around, actually we were working with UNEP as the accredited entity, and it centered around us working with the then DTU, which then ceased to be, which was the institutional changes, and we lost quite a significant amount of time there as well. Yes, and we lost quite a bit of time in that. Is this one better? Okay. All right. So we lost a bit of time around based on that, and then as a result, there were then personnel changes as well, because over time people then move, which then resulted in a lot of delays. This compounded with the next group of challenges, which are capacity-related challenges. Then further led into further delays and challenges. Capacity included mainly the fact that quite often when we were trying to get consultants, we found that we couldn't find the consultants that would be able to do the job. And as such, there were a lot of delays around the procurement around that. At the end of the day, we ended up having a lot of a very short time to deliver on a lot of work, wherein some of the work, there are interdependencies. Ideally, you're supposed to finish one thing before you start another one. But we ended up having to do everything in a very short period of time. Also noting that we are still trying our best to have the NAP submitted before the end of the year, as Lucky has said. We had hoped we would deliver before COP, but at least if we can deliver before the year, and we believe we are going to be able to do that. This resulted in some of the things that Lucky has already talked about, the fact that there are a lot of consultations that were done within a short space of time, which stretched the office as well as the stakeholders. And then some of the stakeholders, they also have their own programs that they are running. They wouldn't be available at the time that we need them, yet within that short space of time. Another challenge maybe that I would want to talk to is data unavailability, which did not only affect the NAP, but we see it as a challenge that is going to impact on the implementation of the NAP. Now, talking about this, now how do we overcome these challenges, particularly the issue of capacity and the issue of data? I will start with the data availability. We've been working with partners, which goes all with partners in terms of trying to ensure that we having the different sectors collect some of the data that is not there. And then as well, in terms of the capacity, like he has already said, the importance of building local capacity. We have started working on trying to institutionalize the work. We have been working with local institutions and trying to build their capacity. It also results in delays, but at least we know that we are investing in something that can help us in the long run. In a nutshell, I will say those are some of the challenges and some of the means to overcome them. Some of the challenges, there was really nothing that we can do about it, but it was learning how best to live with it and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dudu. I'm sure there's some similarities across all countries, but I don't know, maybe in Grenada it's a different set of challenges that you want to speak to, Martin.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Could you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, my name is Martin Barreto, and I'm the Commonwealth Climate Finance Advisor in Grenada. I'm a Grenadian myself. And Grenada is a very, very tiny island just north of Venezuela, which is in the news a lot. And, we have a population of 120,000 people, so we are very small. Now, the NAP is a tool that help countries respond to climate risk and build long-term resilience. And as Roxanne, Dr. Graham was saying in the video, the very intensity and frequency of storms really affect that ability to plan and integrate NAP into your developmental plans. Only this year, Hurricane Melissa was a Category 5 that landed in Jamaica. I think that is the largest storm that ever took land in the Caribbean. So when we do plan for a NAP and we budget a NAP, in 2 years the budget could be twice as much, and what happens as well is that the very infrastructure that you should build resilience on, your ecosystem and your development infrastructure, is weakened by the frequency of storms. And Dr. Graham spoke about last year we had Hurricane Beryl, which affected the NAP process by 6 months or so. So the frequency of storm do affect your NAP. The other one is other challenge is capacity, and you need a strong human resource to develop and implement the NAP. And when I got to Grenada last year, I noticed there were a NAP team there. There were 3 staff, only focusing on the NAP. And I thought, wow, that was really great. And thanks to the NAP Global Network for that support. And then I later learned that they are just contract staff, so they may soon be living there. So that's a further challenge. But what they did, though, in one of the program of action, and I think program of action 1, it's institutional strengthening. And in that, they put that they should have dedicated staff. So in order to achieve that goal, we need to have staff, and I hope that is achieved. So that's capacity is good. And also to, I worked with Roxanne on some aspect of the NAP, and one of it is integrating gender into the NAP as well. And I know they did some of that, but we were also being part of the Commonwealth Climate Finance Hub, and we have gender specialists. They also looked at the Commonwealth policy and put another layer on all of the POAs in the NAP. So we put a gender lens on that as well. And so that was as good. And I also assisted them with budgeting the NAP. And, that was a big capacity challenge as well. Because when I heard, where is the budget information for the first NAP? Nobody knows where it is. So the lack of the availability of data. And then, I determined, what method would I use to budget the NAP? And then I again had to use the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub. We are covered 56 countries. We have advisors in most of the SIDS countries in Africa. And then we also have an alumni network. So they were able to guide me as to where I could get examples of how to budget the NAP. And so when I decided on the different models, even within the different ministries like infrastructure and health, even getting costing was also an issue. So data and data availability is very important. And again, there's also the issue of tracking your NAP as well, and having the data software, MRV system that you need. And again, smartly in the NAP, they have a program of action directly related to developing a strong MRV system for the NAP. So I think that was excellent on their part. And Dr. Graham talked about inclusiveness and ensuring that the stakeholders are informed, and they did an excellent work. And thanks to the NAP Global Network that assisted them in doing those things as well. So I'll stop here.
Sure, great. Thanks so much. Really interesting challenges. I'll pass it to you, and then just some reflections already on what I've been hearing on some of the challenges. Over to you, Deepa.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. So my name is Deepa Pulanikatil. I'm the Commonwealth National Climate Finance Advisor for Eswatini. And previously, I have worked in Eswatini under various roles, including the NDC coordinator and as a consultant for the government and so on. So firstly, I want to say congratulations to Eswatini for advancing the NAP so much and also submitting the NDC recently. I think that's a great achievement, and I think Director mentioned about, and Lucky also mentioned about the number of meetings that are being held. You know, there's workshops every other week for the NDC, for the NAP. So stakeholder fatigue was one of the major challenges, and we experienced that even when we did the previous NDC. But because there's a small team that is working, there are ways to synergize and we help each other, and so that the meetings are more efficiently done and information is gathered more efficiently and so on. And both the NAP has the adaptation measures and methods to help communities adapt to climate change is well articulated, but also the NDC also has a component on adaptation. And I think then the next challenge as we look to the future would be how to finance both the NDC and the NAP. And that's where we as climate finance advisors should come in and work with stakeholders to develop bankable projects. And that's where we have to look at innovative ways of financing. And we just recently held a webinar on green bonds and blue bonds. Eswatini government was part of it. Director Dudu gave the opening remarks. So there's ways to explore methods, innovative financing mechanisms to bring funding, to make adaptation bankable, to make resilience investable. So that's the future thinking that we have to look at.
That's great. No, thanks for that. And thanks for sort of highlighting some of the challenges. And three things kind of struck me from what I just heard. So one was actually the very practical and unfortunate reality of just shocks. You talked about Hurricane Beryl, you talked about COVID, and those can be actually big, significant challenges to actually advancing something as complex and involved as a NAP process. And so we do, we need to keep those in account as we sort of map things out. The second one, of course, was capacity. We heard whether it's the number of physical bodies that are working on the NAP process to actual specific technical capacities, and that allow us to do this types of analysis and engagement that's needed. And Martin, one thing that you said to me, really, I wrote it down that I thought was really interesting, because as we know, NAPs our NAP processes are supposed to be iterative. You're going to be updating them in a few years, and hang on to the data and the information and the methodologies and the approaches that you use for your first NAP, so that you have something to build on a bit more easily the next time you come back to it. And so I think that needs to be part of the data and knowledge management system for the NAP. So thanks for sharing that. I want to move to talking about some of the institutional capacity needs and strengthening supports that you receive through, whether it's initiatives like the NAP Global Network or maybe some other partners. But what kind of support what do you think is most critical that partners can provide to really strengthen the institutional foundations and structures for your NAP processes? So maybe Dudu, do you want to jump in with that one?
Thank you very much. A lot of support is needed, but as we look for the support, the important thing is that we grow as well with the support that is being given. So from my perspective, one key thing that we need as we work with various partners is the patience to build local capacity. Sometimes it's easy to bring external assistance, someone will just do and then leave. And sometimes this leaves us with reports that have names behind them, where it ends up being the so-and-so's report because they did it, they left us with it, and the capacity is not there. So building the local capacity to do that is important. And then it also helps the process, as it has been said, that the process needs to be iterative. We need to be able to know where the data was that we used and so on. And if we build the local capacity, that will be very, very important. We have already talked about data issues. The issue of data is very, very critical. As I indicated earlier, it's not only critical for the formulation of the NAP, but even for the proposal development that will lead to implementation as well. So while as Eswatini we have started the process with the assistance of ICAT, there is more that needs to be done. A lot of sectors still need assistance, and we need to understand more clearly the needs of the sectors in as far as data is concerned, and generally capacities. Another area that we are working in Eswatini is we are working with partnerships. We are partnering on local adaptation planning. In this regard, we found that it's important that we look into local adaptation plans, because the top-down plans, while they are okay, but adaptation needs to be owned by the communities that need them, and it needs to respond to their needs in a way that is acceptable to them. So for us right now, we are advancing that, but it's something, the issue of local adaptation plans is something that we initiated during this NAP development, but it's not fully integrated. It didn't really inform the plan itself. So in the future, we would need to ensure that we integrate properly the nationally identified priorities with the locally identified plans in a neat way, and I hope we'll be able to do that, and where possible we will get the assistance. Otherwise, we really appreciate the lot of cooperation that we get both from local stakeholders and the international and regional partners that we're working with.
Great. Good to hear. So capacity, data, and then sort of local planning are sort of three things that you really would highlight sort of as institutional needs for advancing the NAP process. Maybe quickly sticking with Eswatini though, before we hop over to Grenada, is there something you would like to add to that as well, Deepa?
Sure. I think in talking of partners, we can also mention a NAP Global Network that has supported Eswatini in developing the first adaptation communication in 2021. And as part of that, there was also studies done on looking at indigenous and traditional knowledge and how communities use that knowledge to adapt to climate change. And that was also documented. And it was quite amazing how communities observe nature so closely. They observe the behavior of insects and and animals and birds, and observe the skies, the moon, and so on, and actually make decisions with regard to whether to plant early or to plant late, or whether it will be possibly a dry year or a drought year, and it might affect their agriculture. So that kind of information is very important. While we talk of data, the scientific information, the modern information, we also need to make sure we don't forget the traditional information. As part of that support, we also, NAP Global Network and our team went to 4 regions. I remember Lucky was also traveling, and we went to 4 different regions and spoke to communities. So it was not just workshops in Baban with our usual stakeholders, but also going out, the outreach to the community, and that's very important. So I think, there were lots of partners that supported Eswatini, not just for the NAP, but in the climate change space throughout, UNEP and UNDP, and for NAP Global Network, as well as for the NDC, there were several, about 8 development partners. And adaptation ideas were generated from them. But I think the most important partner is our stakeholder, our experts, and some of them are right here. The major institutions like Eswatini Environment Authority, NDMA, the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Forestry, Ministry of Economic Planning, and so on. So they have been patient and providing us information which help us develop these national documents and plans.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, over to you, Martin. Same question about institutional needs.
Okay, thank you. And as the Commonwealth Climate Finance Advisor in Grenada, we're looking at how we could put our house in order, you know, to go on that mission and to implement all of those long-term goals. How are we ready and prepared? So we're looking now at the organization and the organizational structure, and you know, how do we set up the respective arms and unit we need to drive the process. So we're looking at setting up now a climate finance unit. We're looking at an MRV unit as well, so that we could monitor, we could track and monitor and have data on the NAPs on what we intend to do. We're also looking at a whole governance structure too, because one of the challenges before was that mainstreaming the process across government. So, and I think on the 26th, we're going to launch the NAP and launch the National Climate Change Focal Point Network. And that focal point network would be represented in every ministry, including the private sector and the civil society sector. And that would be for driving the processes in all of those ministries. So, and we're also looking at how could we better coordinate to not only at the technical level, but also at the administrative level. So we're looking at the permanent secretary level as well. And, you know, the global network, NAP network, has been a North Star, because they provided a lot of capacity in monitoring already. They have prepared a number of the revision reports, and they continue to help with capacity and outreach in the NAP as well. So I think that is a number of things added to some of the others that the folks have said that we are doing.
That's it'll be interesting to see how this focal points network goes, because I think it's a very promising model where you try to make adaptation sort of everybody's business, and then the key is going to make sure it's also everybody's priority.
So in the network, what we're planning to do as well is to operate a secretariat within the ministry. So we don't leave people to operate on their own, but we'll have a secretariat to drive that network. But not only that one, then we have the National Climate Change Committee, and we have the Sustainable Development Council that meets and as a clearinghouse for a lot of climate and environmental issues. So that secretariat, we hope that will drive all of those arms. And we hope, you know, through a multi-year readiness, we could get support for that to kick it off.
Great. Okay, great. Well, look, I know we're running out of time, so I just want to give you one last question, because obviously we're here at COP30. This is the implementation COP. You all have either you've both basically finished your national adaptation plans, and we'll have them hopefully both submitted by the end of the year. Grenada, again, having just submitted theirs this morning. So what is actually your next step? We know that, you know, there's always been talk about finance. So even looking at finance, what do you think is actually your next step when it comes to accessing finance? And how do you see COP30 and the conversations here helping with any of that? So let's start with you, Dudu.
Thank you very much. In terms of next steps, there is the issue of ensuring that our NAP is integrated into our national plans. We have a plan of government that is called the Program of Action, which is already in place. The good thing that we have with that plan, it already makes consideration of the NAP and ensuring that its implementation is also monitored within that NAP, so that when it's already okay. But then we also have the NDP, National Development Plan. With the National Development Plan, we'll be having we will soon be having a revision of that, and then we will need to make sure that the National Adaptation Plan is well integrated into that as well, as that will help local ownership and implementation as well. And then additionally to that, we are also looking into reviewing our TNA. It's been quite a while since we did our technology needs assessment. So as we undertake the technology needs assessment, we'll need to make sure that we also look into technologies that will help us build the resilience, particularly in the areas that have been identified under as part of the NAP. And then in terms of we then also need to move into from planning to implementation, wherein we need to ensure that our implementation plan and investment plan that we are working on is in place, and then from there we develop proposals. I will not delve much into that because Deepa is here to talk more into that. But in addition to that, one other thing that we need to continue doing is continue with cooperation both domestically and internationally. And being here at COP30, it's one of the avenues that we have to continue meeting partners that can assist us as we move forward to ensure that we do our planning right, we do the right proposal development, and we do things in a way that will make it easier for us to mobilize resources and access those resources that are available. And COP is one of the places where you meet a lot of partners that can assist you, that you can partner with the different aspects of work that we are to undertake as we move forward. Implementation, that's the next phase. Without implementation, we cannot build the resilience. Then the NAP is a useless exercise. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Deepa, why don't you give us a bit more of a dive into the finance aspect?
Sorry, I lost audio a little bit at some point, but I think I got the gist of most of this. And Director articulated very eloquently about the policy level and the planning, and also the integration aspect, the National Development Plan. Our Chief Economist is here with us from Ministry of Economic Planning and Development. So the integration of adaptation and climate action into the National Development Plan. So at policy level, I think Eswatini is doing really well, and government really has that priority to make it development resilient and have adaptive capacity. But when it comes to financing, we still have to look at ways. So as Director mentioned about the investment plans, those are very important. And getting the stakeholders to prioritize the projects, those are important. We also need to identify the right instruments, whether it's debt swaps or bonds, climate bonds, or you can even have adaptation bonds, green bonds, and so on. That's important. We need 1.33 billion to implement the NAP, and that's not a small number. Then also what we are seeing is generally, not just in Eswatini, but globally, there is a trend towards nexus projects where you have multiple benefits. So if you're having a project on adaptation, communities are benefiting, farmers are benefiting, but there's also nature-based solutions that are integrated, and biodiversity benefits are being accrued. So that kind of approach will have multiple wins over several sectors, and that's something we can look at. Then continuing on financing, while looking for external funding is important, but Eswatini has proved, I think it's a success story, that one, we kept a very ambitious goal of planting 10 million trees, which has now been increased to 15 million trees. And we have Wilfred here from Department of Forestry, and they started the work. They didn't wait for external funding. They just started with what they had. They had nurseries, they mobilized the stakeholders, people were planting trees. The senior management of the ministry was involved, and they achieved about 8 million trees planted in a very short time. And now, of course, they are getting funding from external sources, but initially it was just and contributions from stakeholders within the country. So I think that's a very good example, and it was showcased by UNEP in the post-TNA reports globally. Then coming back to your question on the COP now, the COP30, I think COP30 is both an implementation COP and an adaptation COP. So while implementation is we need finance, there's that focus, but we are also focused on adaptation because of the decision making in terms of the global goal on adaptation. So all the countries and stakeholders and experts had come together with over 9,400, 9,500 adaptation indicators, which were distilled into 450, taken to Bonn during the June subsidiary sessions. And then it's now been reduced to 100. And in this COP, we will be making some decisions on that and having perhaps a smaller number. And that's important because while we are working on locally led adaptation, having communities come up with local adaptation plans, there are indicators there. And then at the national level, at the National Adaptation Plan, there are indicators. All of this should trickle up to the global goal on adaptation indicators as well. So this COP is key in that aspect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Martin, over to you about next steps for Grenada's NAP.
Okay, thank you. And I believe Grenada is in a very good stage now to move from plans to action. As we heard that our NAP was submitted, our NDCs is waiting on government approval, and our BTR is in a draft stage. And I think what came out of all of these documents is that we identify what is our problems and how we can address them. And I'm given an interesting task to look at our country investment program. So I'm also looking forward to sitting down with Dr. Graham, because they have identified their top priority areas. So I hope we can look at that and then willing that into the COP. Yesterday we met with the AF, the Adaptation Fund, and they said to me, Grenada has $30 million there, and you could get your entity accredited and you could go after that money. So I'm hoping that's one of the things we could do. So I'll stop here.
Okay, great. Well, good luck with that. And yeah, absolutely. The accredited entity will be critical, I think, for the next step. So look, we need to close it, but thank you so much to our speakers and our earlier presenters, Lucky and Roxanne, who wasn't with us but shared that video about the NAP processes and your respective journeys. Lots of lessons and really great stuff for others to learn about. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you all for joining us. And let's give a round of applause to our speakers.